The wind howled through the narrow alleys of the fishing village, carrying with it the tang of salt and the faint odor of rotting seaweed. Lanterns swung from iron hooks outside ramshackle huts, their flames flickering as though plagued by some restless spirit. Old fishermen clustered around crates and benches by the docks, speaking in hushed voices. Whenever the subject of that vessel arose, it told tales of a large galleon wreathed in fog and silhouetted against a moonless sky, floating upon black seas no map dared to show. Those who glimpsed it never forgot the sight, and most of them never returned to speak of it again. They said the ship promised an impossible treasure to those who yearned for gold above all else. But such fortunes came at a price, measured not in coin but in souls. I first heard these rumors while nursing a tankard of stale ale at the local tavern, run by a man named Bartle, whose weathered face seemed carved from driftwood. He claimed to have seen the mysterious galleon emerge from the darkness many years ago, though no one believed him. "I was but a boy," Bartle murmured, wiping a glass with a rag. "We had been warned never to sail that route, but my father was desperate for a fresh catch. We set out, and the clouds turned an angry shade of black. Then from the gloom it appeared, a ship so massive it seemed carved from a single piece of obsidian. Its sails glowed faintly, like phantoms under a baleful moon. A chill took hold in my bones." Bartle paused, swallowing hard. My father turned away, but the promise of gold sang in his heart. He was a man in debt, with a family to feed. We drew near. Yes, we drew near. The bartender refused to share more, turning away with tears shining in his eyes. But what he had spoken was enough to stir something in me. A man needs money, especially when times are hard. The legends describe golden coins the size of a man's palm, emeralds that glittered like unholy fire, and pearls cradling lost souls within them. Yet every telling ended the same. The treasure never left that cursed deck. Something prevented the fortune from passing onto mortal soil, if the mortal who laid hands on it was fool enough to try. What that something was, no tale could say with certainty. Some said burning ghosts prowled the corridors of the ship. Others spoke of shadowy creatures in tattered sailor garb. All agreed that once you set foot upon that deck, you would never truly return unchanged. It was nearly a fortnight later when the opportunity arose to find out if these tales held any truth. Jackson Rourke, a trader who possessed an unhealthy desire for gold, had posted a cruise sign-up on the dock's notice board. He claimed that he had located the ship's route, gleaning clues from half-rotted logbooks and ancient proclamations in pirate hideouts. He needed bold men and women to stake their lives on a grand expedition, an expedition that would guarantee them untold riches if they dared follow him. My heart hammered as I read his notice, my imagination fumbling between dread and excitement. I was at a point in my life where the risk of poverty and the risk of ghosts measured about the same, so I signed on. Within days, a motley group assembled aboard Jackson Rourke's brigantine, the Sea Fox. Rourke himself was a wiry figure with hawkish eyes, his once fine jacket worn thin at the elbows. Beside him stood his companion, Marie Lupin, a woman reputed to command knowledge of spells gleaned from forbidden tomes. She carried a leather-bound book strapped to her hip, and I spotted cryptic symbols etched into her arm when the breeze lifted her sleeve. Other crew members included Christian, a muscle-bound deckhand with a superstitious streak; Valencia, an expert navigator from distant shores; and two younger sailors, Davis and Monty, both drawn by rumors of treasure that could change their fortunes forever. Each of us had different reasons for stepping onto that deck, but we shared a hunger that only gold or some catastrophic revelation could satisfy. We left the safe harbor under an overcast sky. The horizon was bleak and dark, reflecting our unspoken fears. As the days passed, the wind grew colder, and the lull of the waves turned into a haunted hush. Our breath hung in the air at night, and even the gulls ceased their calls. An unnerving calm settled on the waters, as though something watched us from the depths. Familiar stars vanished, replaced by strange constellations that did not match any of Valencia's charts. We drifted into what could only be described as the Black Seas, rumored in the old fishermen's tales. On the fourth night, the moon disappeared behind angry clouds. A milky streak of mist drifted toward our brigantine, clinging to the sails like spider's silk. Rourke spotted it first, a creeping light, faint and sickly green, flickering in the distance. My eyes strained to see. Then the form of a monstrous galleon took shape, its hull impossibly grand and carved with gargoyles, whose stony faces gaped in silent screams. Slowly, it glided across the dark water. The sails dripped with an evil luminescence, tattered in places like the web of a diseased spider. No wind propelled it, yet it moved as though guided by unseen currents. The Sea Fox's crew huddled on deck, hearts pounding. Christian made the sign of the cross, while Monty muttered a choked prayer. Rourke, however, wore a triumphant grin, as though his darkest wish had finally manifested. He barked orders, demanding we draw alongside the monstrous craft. A chorus of frantic whispers erupted, but the lure of gold glinted in our minds, overriding any hesitation. With trembling limbs we manned the ropes and rigging. The Sea Fox cleaved the waters, approaching so close that we could make out pitted cannon ports and rotted railings covered in barnacles. If not for the spectral glow, the vessel might have seemed a sunken wreck, dredged from the ocean floor. As we came alongside, a plank extended from the galleon's side almost of its own accord. It thudded onto the Sea Fox's railing. I saw no hand to place it there. The entire galleon might as well have been alive, acting on some voiceless impulse. A hush fell over our crew. We exchanged anxious glances. Then Rourke, eyes lit with voracious intent, strode forward. He tested the plank. It held fast. He gestured for the rest of us to follow. One by one we crossed, each footstep creaking ominously on the ancient wood. Monty faltered halfway, but Valencia helped him across. All the while, I felt something oppressive pressing on my chest, as though crossing an invisible threshold between realms. The deck was strewn with detritus from centuries of misuse, empty barrels corroded by salt, ropes stiff with age, tattered sails coiled in heaps. Each object glowed with that same eerie greenish tint. Water dripped from overhead rigging, though there was no rain. We advanced, peering at the silent gloom. Doors leading below deck beckoned, and beyond them a faint golden gleam, impossibly bright in contrast to the rest of the ship, drew our gazes. Without a word, Rourke led us onward, ignoring the subtle skittering sounds that seemed to echo within the corridor walls. Echoes of footsteps? Unnerving scuttling? It was impossible to tell, but the feeling that something lived there, something unseen, clung to me like an old nightmare. We reached a sprawling hold, a cavernous chamber containing stacks of treasure that defied reason. Chests lined every corner, their lids flung open to reveal cascades of coins and gemstones that pulsed softly, as though possessed by their own heartbeat. Ornate crowns lay tumbled among lesser baubles. Silver swords with intricately wrought hilts rested beside priceless strings of pearls. The sight was enough to elicit a collective gasp from our party, followed by hungry stares. Monty's jaw dropped. Christian's eyes twitched in disbelief. Valencia seemed quietly awed, while I had to remind myself to breathe. The legend was real, and so was the danger. My mind pricked with uneasy warnings, but the gold shimmered too brightly to resist. Rourke advanced, stooping to lift a handful of coins that shimmered like they had just been minted. He rubbed them between his fingers in a rapture, grinning like a demon discovering infernal secrets. "This is it," he whispered, his voice hollow in the silent hold, more than we could ever spend in 10 lifetimes. He turned to us, his eyes gleaming with an almost manic light. "Gather all you can. We'll find a way to haul it back to the Sea Fox. We'll be the richest sailors this world has ever known." Heedless, we began stuffing pockets and sacks. Davis wrestled open a chest filled with rubies, while Monty scooped fistfuls of pearls into a satchel. I grabbed gold coins and a gilded necklace set with a massive sapphire. My hands trembled. Was this fortune real, or would it vanish in the dawn? Even Marie Lupin, who always displayed cautious reserve, knelt to inspect a small locked casket. She chanted something under her breath, and the lock sprang open to reveal a silver chalice studded with black diamonds. She stared at it as though entranced. Then came the first scream. It pierced the oppressive silence with jarring force. Startled, we all raised our heads. The scream belonged to Davis, who stumbled backward, flailing as though an invisible force clutched at him. The bag of rubies spilled across the deck with a metallic clatter. His eyes bulged in raw terror. We rushed to help, but an odd shimmer passed over his figure, and he went rigid. Then, he began to sink through the ship's deck, as though it were nothing but shallow water. Rourke, Christian, and I grabbed his arms, but our grasp met only empty air. Davis's form dissolved like a reflection on muddy water, spiraling into the wood until he vanished completely. One moment he was there, the next he was gone. Only the coins he'd claimed remained, scattered where he had stood. We gaped in horror. Monty cursed, crossing himself wildly. Rourke pressed his lips together, his complexion ashen, though his eyes still harbored greed. "Watch your step," he said, but his tone lacked its earlier confidence. "There may be traps." The fear in his voice revealed more than his words did. Nervous glances were exchanged, but the allure of treasure was potent enough to prevent us from fleeing at once. We continued gathering gold, albeit more cautiously. The wood beneath us felt inexplicably as though it shifted, contracting and expanding with every step. Suddenly, the hold plunged into darkness. That ghostly green glow winked out, as though snuffed by an invisible hand. We froze. A moaning wind echoed through the ship's corridors. Lights reappeared, eyes perhaps, or something else, shifting in the gloom like malevolent fireflies. We huddled together, breath catching in our throats. Some presence moved around us, its footsteps sounding on the creaking boards. Then it came into view, a silhouette in tattered sailor's garb, face obscured by a black cowl. Its eyes glowed that same foul green, though faintly enough to reveal little. More shapes emerged, each a spectral visage of a mariner lost to time. They carried the stench of the grave, their voices rattling like chains in the wind. One of them raised an arm, pointing a bony finger at us. The voice that came forth was layered, as though dozens of drowned souls spoke as one. "You have come to claim the cursed fortune. Greed has guided your hearts. So many before you have tried, but all must pay the toll. Give yourself willingly, or be damned to wander these decks until the end of time." Panic erupted among our group. Monty bolted for the corridor, only to recoil with a shout as another phantom rose up to block him. Christian brandished a knife, but it glowed useless in the gloom. Rourke snarled, "We'll not be frightened away. We'll take what's ours." He snatched a rotting piece of timber from the floor as if to strike at the ghostly forms, but as soon as he swung, his weapon simply passed through them harmlessly. The cowl of the lead apparition shifted as though in silent amusement. Marie Lupin took a trembling step forward. She raised her leather-bound book, opening it to a page scrawled with arcane symbols. With a shaking voice, she recited an incantation, her words resonating like invisible ripples in the stale air. For a moment, the spirits flickered, their forms distorting as though disturbed by her magic. The one who had spoken let out a rasping hiss. Yet in response, a surge of putrid green light radiated outward, knocking Marie backward. She crashed into a crate, the book tumbling from her hands. The spirits advanced again, unaffected and implacable. That was the moment we realized no mortal blade, nor chanting incantation would repel these ghosts. The illusions of power or knowledge we carried mattered little in this place. We were trespassers and thieves, no better, in truth. A primal terror seized me, the kind of fear that warns of an eternal doom lurking just beyond one's field of vision. Valencia gripped my arm. "We have to get out," she hissed, glancing around. "Look at them. They're toying with us." She was right. The apparitions weren't launching a swift assault. Instead, they seemed to be herding us, maneuvering so that no path to the exit was clear. The hold stretched with impossible dimensions. Corridors we had passed mere minutes before vanished or reappeared in different locations. Like a shifting maze, it was as if the ship itself were alive, responding to the ghost's will. The coins in my pockets burned cold against my skin, a clarion reminder of how our greed had brought us here. Monty let out a cry and rushed toward one of the corridors, determined to find some way out. Christian followed, and I, not wanting to be left behind, gathered up Marie still half stunned from the impact and helped her to her feet. Rourke clenched his fists, reluctant to leave the treasure. But faced with the Phantom's horrifying approach, even he realized we needed to regroup on the brigantine. We stumbled into the corridor, the echo of the ghosts' laughter following us. Their voices filled the ship with a melody of the damned. The corridor was an impossible labyrinth. We ran through swirling mist. Turning left and right at random, Marie grimaced, pressing a hand to her temple. Blood trickled from a cut above her brow. Fear fed our frenzy, and before long we became separated, forced in different directions by illusions of winding passageways. I caught glimpses of Monty's terrified face as he rounded a corner, only for the corridor to close behind him. Valencia tugged me into another hall that ended in a spiral staircase leading down, the steps slick with brackish water. We descended carefully, the boards dripping. The entire ship groaned like a wounded beast, as though offended by our presence. My heart thundered, my breath shallowed. Below deck, the walls were coated with algae that glowed faintly. Skeletons in tattered clothing lay half submerged, skulls turned toward the entrance. Their jaws gaped in silent anguish, as if frozen at the moment of a harrowing fate. A watery corridor stretched out, beckoning us deeper. "We have to go back up," Valencia whispered, but a sudden rush of water from behind drove us forward, nearly sweeping us off our feet. We splashed through the flooded hallway, stepping over the remains until we reached a space that resembled a chapel consumed by the sea. Rotting pews stood in partial rows, and at the far end loomed a decaying altar. Behind it, a stained glass window displayed a ghoulish scene of angels with black wings weeping tears of gold. Atop the altar lay Davis, his body splayed as though offered in sacrifice. His eyes stared blankly upward, and a swarm of small, flickering lights, ghostly orbs, hovered around him, drifting in and out of his chest. Valencia clapped a hand over her mouth, stifling a scream. My stomach lurched. He seemed neither fully dead nor alive, suspended in a dreamlike torment. Drawing closer, we saw the orbs dart in startled patterns. I had the wild thought that these were the souls claimed by the vessel, their faint shrieks mingling with Davis's ragged breathing. I wanted to help him, but dread pinned my feet to the floor. From behind the altar emerged a creature, no mere phantom, but a skeleton robed in what might once have been a captain's finery. The gold epaulets were tarnished, the coat ranks devoured by centuries, yet it wore a tri-cornered hat with a single black feather, its empty sockets burning with a putrid glow. An unnatural cold washed over me. A sword, rusted but menacing, scraped along the ground as it advanced. "All who come thirsting for gold serve beneath me," it rasped, voice echoing with the same layered quality as the other apparitions. "Lay your greed upon the altar and join the legion of the cursed." Valencia shook her head in silent desperation. She thrust her hands up as if warding it off, but the spectral captain disregarded the gesture. Its bony fingers clutched Davis's body. The swirling lights flickered around them. Davis's mouth contorted in a silent wail. Then, in one swift motion, the skeleton ripped something intangible from Davis's chest, a flickering orb that pulsed frantically. Davis's body crumpled, instantly reduced to a lifeless husk. The orb hovered for a heartbeat, caught between the captain's grasp and the swirling globes in the air. Then it sank into the open maw of the skeleton. A sickening crack reverberated as the orb disappeared within its hollow rib cage. Davis's flesh dissolved into dust, leaving frayed clothing behind. We stood paralyzed in horror. The skeleton turned toward us. "Your hearts are weighed by greed," it pronounced, pointing its sword. "You will give yourselves to me, or the black seas will swallow you. Either way, your souls are forfeit." Some meager spark of courage flared in me. I grabbed Valencia's arm, and we darted backward, the water sloshing around our ankles. The corridor behind us twisted once more, but now voices called our names. "Monty," from somewhere above, and Christian's terse shout. We plunged forward, following the faint echoes up the staircase. The air burned with a cold that seemed to slice into our lungs. All the while we heard the skeleton's footsteps behind us, slow but inexorable. A group of lesser phantoms' lights bobbed in the distance, closing in from all sides. My thoughts raced. The illusions threatened to separate us. The gold weighed heavily in my pockets, a guilty burden. I spat a curse and flung the coins from me, the loot scattering across the boards. Valencia did likewise, discarding her share of the treasure. The cold lessened fractionally, as though the ship's hold on us weakened. We pressed onward. We burst into a corridor just in time to see Monty emerge from a hidden passage. His eyes were wild with terror. Christian appeared behind him, his face pale as salt. Marie Lupin arrived as well, still clutching her battered spellbook. We formed a desperate knot of survivors. Rourke was missing, having apparently taken a different route. "Where's Jackson?" Monty panted. Nobody answered. We hesitated, staring down the corridor where the spectral captain's presence loomed. Marie Lupin's gaze flicked in the other direction. "We can't stay," she hissed. "He made his choice." That unspoken truth hung in the air. Rourke's fanatic greed would likely doom him if he hadn't already been claimed by the ship. With shaking resolve, we turned and stumbled toward the deck, lurching through shifting passageways that snarled our path. Each time we encountered a dead end, the walls rippled with a malicious, living essence. The crew behind me clung to whatever hope remained. I could practically feel the ship's hunger pressing in. Its timbers throbbed with an unholy life, eager to absorb our souls before we escaped. Finally, we reached the main deck. The exit to the Sea Fox lay just ahead, though the plank appeared to be retracting, inch by inch. The black seas yawned on either side, an endless void that seemed ready to devour us whole. A swirl of spectral forms fluttered overhead. Displaying a surge of courage or despair, Monty flung himself forward, landing on the plank. The rest of us followed, arms outstretched. The ship trembled. Something roared, a monstrous sound, half wind, half abyss. Hands of swirling mist clawed at our limbs. My heart thundered in my ears as I flailed over the fragile conduit, praying it would not vanish beneath my feet. One by one, we tumbled onto the Sea Fox's deck, gasping for breath. The plank splintered behind us, falling away into the black water. The monstrous galleon loomed only a few yards away, its spectral sails writhing with fury, but it could not cross the boundary. It was as though unseen chains bound it to the cursed waters. For an instant, I spotted Rourke on the galleon's deck, disappearing into the shadows. Clutching a chest, he opened his mouth to call out. Whether it was a plea or a curse, I'd never know. The last I saw of him was a swirl of ghostly figures converging upon him, and then the greenish glow winked out, leaving the galleon a black silhouette before it too melted into the dark seas. We cast off at once, sails quivering as we fled that dread place. The black ocean parted and a dense fog rolled in, blotting out our last glimpse of the cursed ship. Our hearts pounded as though expecting revenants to pop up at any moment. For days we drifted, uncertain if we remained within that nightmare realm or if we approached honest waters again. When at last the sun emerged in a stained dawn sky, it was like a benediction on our weary souls. The fisherman's port soon came into view, and the Sea Fox limped into harbor. We stepped ashore, haunted by the memory of drowning eyes, glowing orbs, and the black-robed skeleton that commanded them. Local sailors gawked at our broken forms, and Bartle the tavern keeper recognized in our weary eyes that we had found the ghost ship. People demanded to know if we obtained riches beyond measure. Some eagerly asked if we would go back to claim more. Our expressions were answer enough. There was no sum of gold that could erase the horrors etched into our hearts. From that day on, the nightmares lingered. I could still feel the ship lurking somewhere on the horizon, drifting along those black seas in search of new victims. Perhaps in my dreams I see Rourke's silhouette among the rotting rigging, doomed to sail under that undead captain, enslaved by his own greed. And though I escaped with my mortal life, part of me still trembles whenever the wind shifts. I sense the promise of unearthly treasures, calling out across the waves like a siren's lullaby, beckoning the weak-willed and the desperate to dare the cursed fortune once more. I pray no one answers that call. But greed is an ancient force that thrives in mortal hearts, and the black seas remain ever watchful. And so, from time to time, the stories spread throughout portside taverns, rumors of sickly green sail shimmering in the night, of a phantom galleon emerging from the mists, and of souls who vanish before dawn. The cycle never ends. As long as there is craving for impossible riches, that ghost ship will sail. And when the next group of hapless fortune seekers heeds the whispered tales, it will be there, hungry, patient, endlessly waiting.